Morning guys, welcome back to the shed. Saturday morning. Over the past month or so I've been looking at quite a lot of paint jobs, and to be quite honest, they've been rather poor. As a painter, the last thing you want in a paint job are fish eyes. They're the biggest problem that you could ever come across. You can get dirt nibs in your paint, runs, whatever. Everything is really easily addressed after the paint's dried. You can cut a run out, cut little tiny foreign bodies out of the surface of the paint. Not a problem. Fish eyes are an absolute nightmare. You get fish eyes in your paint because you prepped it poorly. There's no other excuse. I've made loads of excuses over the years. There's polish or silicone in the air. There are guys in the workshops doing something with the airline and there's silicone going everywhere. Regardless what's happening, when you've put your car into the booth and you're cleaning your car down to paint, if you do it right, you will not get one single silicone or fish eye in your paint job. So it's down to you and the way that you prep the car. I'll show you my process, which has been faithful to me for like 40 years as a painter. If you don't deviate from it, if you stick with it, you buy quality products, not cheap and cheerfuls, it will save you hours and hours and hours of trying to repair fish eyes, whether you're trying to touch them in, cut and polish them out, whatever, or if you're that unfortunate that you've needed to sand the car down and do it all again. This is my process. First thing you do before you're looking at damage on a car is you need to clean the car. If you're lucky enough and you've got a valeting bay and you've got valeters outside, they'll take it to your jet wash and they'll jet wash all your car. Unfortunately, they may use some chemical type products, truck washes, traffic film removers, whatever. Nevertheless, it will still come to you cleaner than if they didn't do it. The next stage is consider it that the car hasn't been cleaned. So now you're just trying to wipe off traffic film, just grime that's on the car. A couple of ways you can do it. Cheap and cheerful. If you use a alcohol based foaming window cleaner, saturate the surface all over using your alcohol, and it must be alcohol based cleaner. Then use an ordinary shop towel. Paper towel, not a problem. You can use the proper Body Shop lint free gauze type cottons if you want, that's fine also. This will help you get rid of the grime. I use the window cleaner on smaller items. If I'm just painting a mirror cover, corner of a bumper, whatever, I'd use that. It doesn't go very far. So my second method is a mixture of IPA, isopropyl alcohol. This is just a general cleaning solvent, very slow to evaporate. It's a bit like methylated spirit. You can use methylated spirits as well. To reduce the flash point of this so that it stays wet on the surface for longer and it doesn't stand any chance of igniting or sparking or anything silly, I mix it up in an ordinary squirty bottle, a little spritzer. 50% IPA, 50% tap water. No need to do anything more special than that. Same with the methylated spirits. 50% methylated spirits, 50% water in one of these. Once again, saturate the surface. We're not putting a little bit on and wiping a little bit off. Saturate the whole panel. Do one panel or half a panel at a time so that you know where you are. That should stay wet enough for you to get what we call in the trade wipe on, wipe off. So So you get one rag to wipe the surface, and that would wipe off all the nasties that's on the surface, because they're now, we'll call them born, they're now actually loose from the surface because you've put this alcohol on. Once you've removed them from the surface with your dirty rag, we'll say, from your wet rag, then you do the wipe off with the second rag and follow yourself through. So obviously, as you can appreciate, you can't go too far ahead of yourself with the wet stage, because it will start to evaporate. Once it's evaporated and gone dry, your contaminants have now dried and stuck back on the surface. So when you go back over top of it with your second rag, you're just wiping over the surface. It's like as if you've not put any wet down to start with. So it has to stay wet when you use your wipe off cloth, okay? If you do that all over your panel as your stage one, then you would now go into repairing your panel, whether it's just a little tiny scratch or whether it's a major repair. From here on in, you do your bodywork. The last thing you want now is to recontaminate that surface. So you don't touch it with your hands. Your skin normally discretes oils all the time. If you have a nice clean panel that's sanded down, you put your thumb on it for 3 or 4 seconds, pull it off, you will have a fingerprint in that panel that's quite difficult to remove. So the best thing is don't put it back on there. So from here on in, you're now doing body work rather than clean the car. Always wear your gloves. It's there to protect you, protect your hands, health and safety, but more so, in my mind, being a painter, you protect the panel that you're going to paint. That panel will now stay as clean as possible. So if we're trying to eliminate bad paint jobs or redoing paints, gloves from here on in. Carry out then, do all your bodywork, do all your repairs, priming stages, whatever. You're now going to put the car into the booth. You now want to paint. Most of you painters out there will already realise that when you're putting primer on a car, you don't really see fisheye silicons. Seems to cover somehow and you don't know they're there. When you're putting a base coat on the car, whether it be waterborne, whether it be solvent based, you don't really see, unless you've got a really terrible job, you don't really see the silicone. The first time that you're aware of any contaminants on the surface is when you're putting your clear coat on, and then it's sort of too late to do something. So after your primer stage, if you've worn your gloves and you've rubbed it down nice and sweet and all the panel's nice and tidy, you've not put any more thumbprints on it, we're still going to say that at this time you've still not put any contaminants onto the surface. But now we want to clean for paint. Contaminants, there's 2 types of contaminants really. One's organic contaminants, one's inorganic. Organic, mostly like dirt and grime, tree sap, things like this. They're better off washed off with a water-based cleaner. Things like tar, which are obviously inorganic, you need a solvent-based cleaner. How do you know which one's on your panel? You don't. So the best thing to do is treat them as there's both on your panel. My process here on in, once again, use quality materials. If you're going to buy a cheap and cheerful panel wipe for £8–10 for 5 litres, it's not really going to do the job as one that's £25 for 5 litres. Couple I've trusted over the years, if you buy a decent Glasurit silicone wipe, it's a good product. I've got some Spies Hecker one in the other shed, good. General middle of the road, because I don't want to sort of punt the top end of the scale of the cost of these parts, but a good quality middle of the range cost is what I'm going to show you guys now. I've got to like this U-POL 2020 or 2002 I should say. This is a slow degreaser, so the surface is going to stay wet long enough to get all those contaminants loose off the surface so that you can now wipe them over, but also not dry on you so that you can use your clean rag after you've wiped off the dirt. So slow for me is always better, and it must be anti-silicone. That's the thing. It's not just a panel wipe, it's anti-silicone. If you look on the labels, if you buy one that says anti-silicon, you won't go wrong. I put that on with a pressurized chemical proof squirty, just a pump up spray, like a green fly spray or whatever. Once again, soak the panel. You don't want to put a little bit on the panel and then move it to where there's dry patches on your panel. You want to soak the panel. Half a panel at a time is fine. 2 or 3 passes of this gives a great big pass of wetness. Soak it, absolutely soak it. When I start wiping off this part of the process, you can buy, like these rags in here, proper solvent rags to wipe off. If you've got your money in your budget, buy them because they're fantastic. If you haven't, as a pretty good alternative, and I've been using these for a long time, I just buy the ordinary multi-purpose, like what we used to call like a J cloth. These, in the way that they're made, they're like pressed with like lots of little hollow pockets, so they absorb quite a lot. There's very little lint on them, if any. So once again, 2 of these. Soak your panel with your sprayer, wipe it off with this, and then once the surface has sort of splashed off, use a second one, a clean one, and come behind it. Small areas at a time. I must emphasize small areas at a time. Don't go and do half a car and then expect it to work the same. You need half a panel at a time. That would be great. Once you've done that, we're looking at the organic things that might be on the surface still. If you've ever tried to wash a car that's been parked under a tree or something for a long time, all your truck washers and that don't seem to move it. Still seem to put a lot of effort in, but just basically warm soapy water gets it off the quickest. So with your organic contaminants that might still be on the panel, we now use a water-based cleaner. Now this is what I'll classify as a standalone panel wipe on its own. It was designed just to be used on its own, to wipe a panel clean, same process as the solvent-based one, and it will do the job fine. But I found if you use both, solvent-based first, water-based second, that's your best. What I'm using is the Standoid cleaner. Great cleaner, sensible money again, middle of the range. So exactly the same process now. Another spritzer, another 2 rags. Use your water-based cleaner on it after. Same principle again. Half a panel at a time. Don't get too far ahead of yourself. This might sound a little bit over the top. This might sound 2 tins of cleaner, 2 spritzers, a little third spritzer for your IPA to start with, lots of different rags, 5 or 6 different rags, pair of gloves, whatever. The next time you have fish eyes in your paint job and you've got to rub it all down, start again. Sometimes you can't even get rid of the silicone on the surface or the fish eyes with one repair. Sometimes I've seen guys do it 2-3 times to get rid of fish eyes. Weigh up what I've just said. Is it easier to spend half an hour in the booth, whistling away, listening to your radio, wiping the car, wiping it on, wiping it off, wiping it on, wiping it off, and that job's painted and you haven't got one fish eye in that paint job? You tell me next time, is it worth it? Is it worth 2 different cleaners or 3 different cleaners and half a dozen pieces of rag? Because I know, well, I've had silicone in jobs and I've needed to paint the bonnet again, the boot lid again. Silicone's come out of a boot spoiler onto the surface of the boot lid, or silicone armour rolls and that type of stuff is actually weeped out from like a windscreen rubber or a trim or something like that. I think you'll find that this process that I use, so that you don't get any silicone or fish eyes in your panels to start with, every job that you do right, you'll come out that booth thinking, wow. It's as simple as that, really. Right, only a quick one today, but I just like you to know it is a tough life being a painter when you've spent a lot of time prepping a car and you've put a lovely coat of primer on, it's all rubbed down, lovely coat of base coat, you've got no blotchiness in the base coat. All you're thinking to yourself is 2 coats are clear and this job's a good one. And you get your clear in the gun and the first pass you make and it all bubbles up behind you with loads of silicone. That's an absolute killer. It's an absolute trade destroyer. It is the worst thing that can happen to you as a painter. So again, this is my process. It works for me. Try it. Don't be frightened of buying a couple of tins of cleaner and trying it. And then in a week or so's time you say to yourself, I wish I'd have been doing this years ago, because you just do not get any fish eyes. Right, I hope that's been helpful, guys. Sorry it's been so long between videos, but life's a bit busy, always is these days. Any comments? Give me some comments, give me some feedback. Let me know how you're going, and I'll try to do some more videos the next weekend. Thanks, guys.